Yo guys, what is up? Max in our Path of Exile 2 video, and today I wanted to go over kind of my updated guide to our Ice Shot Deadeye build. Now, the original video that I posted for this was very much like just kind of getting to T15 maps. We really hadn't put much currency into the build, hadn't min-maxed. We're still messing around with things. I'm now invested pretty heavily into the build, and honestly, one of the craziest things that I just wasn't expecting is we are quite tanky on this build. Our EHP on this setup right now is around 35,000. EHP being basically the estimated amount of damage that it would take to kill us. And part of that is because we have so much evasion and so much energy shield recovery. When I get hit, I'm recovering like 80% of my energy shield every time. And so this setup blasts, but it also, besides being able to clear very quickly, it can also just do any map mod, any content, any pinnacle boss. There's really nothing that I'm worried about. We streamed for like 11 hours this build yesterday, and I died twice, and both of those times were because I was sprinting in a map and like fell down, and you're like basically on the ground for like 5 seconds, not able to do anything. But as long as you're not like doing any dumb sprinting, you basically just like are very, very tanky on this setup. And so I want to break down everything you guys need to know. Hope you enjoyed the video. Let's do this. So let's go over the overview of the build, and then we'll get into the specifics. So Ice Shot does a ton of damage. It was recently buffed. It fires more shards. Those do more cold damage. It fires in a wider area. It's got better clear speed, and it's got better single target damage. However, Ice Shot inherently is not a great single target skill. So we are making our ice shots hit a ton of times with two tricks, basically. The first is Tornado Shot. When we cast a Tornado Shot, if we line up in front of it, we can get a ton of projectiles. Now, you're not seeing it here because there's no target, but when we're shooting this in front of a Tornado Shot, and we also have our Mirage Deadeye, they will also shoot a Tornado Shot. Their projectiles will get all of the benefits and all of the gear that we're wearing, and so we can turn Tornado Shot into a skill that usually fires like one projectile and hits an enemy once. If we're lining up our Tornado Shot and our Mirage Archer, we can get tons of overlapping projectiles for screen-wide clear, but also significant boss damage. We are using the Deadeye Ascendancy for a lot of the damage, quality of life, but also Mirage Deadeye, which is going to be firing our Ice Shot as well. That's going to help with our single target damage, but also our screen clear. On this setup, we're getting a ton of our survivability from high evasion. Currently, if we get our stacks up, I'm at around 80% evasion. So we don't get hit very often, but because we have such high evasion rating, we're able to use Ghost Dance. Now, Ghost Dance, we recover when we get hit. We get 5% of our energy shield back, or 5% of our evasion back as energy shield. So anytime that I get hit while I have Ghost Dance Shrouds active, I get 1,765 energy shield back. And because we're an evasion-based build, we don't get hit very often, but when we do, we're going to lose energy shield, but we'll get that right back. We've also got other forms of mitigation, like deflection. We've got a bunch of life on kill. We've got some of our damage taken as mana. We've got a lot of mana recovery. And so basically, we've got a ton of quality of life, but also a lot of survivability, because we're not going to get hit very often. We've got a decent enough health pool to not really get one shot, and then when we do get hit, we recover that very, very quickly. So that is kind of the core setup there. For our gem setups in our Mirage Deadeye, we've got Ice Shot, Cooldown Recovery, Prolonged Duration, Elemental Armament, and Cold Pen. We just want this thing shooting some Ice Shots, doing a bunch of damage. On our Ice Shot, we're using Elemental Armament, Overextend for the crit damage, Rapid Attacks 2, Rakiata's Flow, and Garakan's Resolve. Rakiata's allows us, because this is a build that basically gets all of our damage from a single skill, we can technically use even more lineage supports, but Rakiata's and Garakan's do tons of things for us. Rakiata's allows us to treat monster elemental resistances as inverted, so we don't really care about elemental penetration as much on our skill tree, which saves us a lot of skill points. And then we can also use Garakan's Resolve, which sets our crit chance to a maximum of 50%. But our crit chance with our supported skills bifurcates. Basically, we'll roll our crit chance twice, and if we crit, if it rolls our crit chance and we crit, and then it rolls it again and it crit again, we do twice of our crit damage. So we get our crit damage twice. which is insane because currently on this build, I have a 442% crit damage bonus. So we're getting like almost 900% crit damage when we air quotes double crit, which is a huge damage increase in POB. This gave me like 35 to 40% more damage for the whole build just putting this on, which is kind of insane. We're also using mana remnants as a way to get more mana, but mainly for Katal's rejuvenation. Whenever we pick up any remnants, we're going to get cooldown. This is a massive source of like 40% cooldown. That cooldown is going to affect how often our Mirage Deadeye is up, which we want to be up very, very often. So that's why we're using mana remnants. Freezing Salvo we've got as an option for bosses, not super important. At the point where I don't really use this anymore, but Freezing Salvo allows us to freeze enemies and also get Ice Bite, so that when we do freeze with it, we get a bunch of extra bonus cold damage. We've got Ghost Dance with Compressed Duration. This reduces the amount of time between us getting Ghost Shroud stacks, so that's why we're using Compressed Duration there. Ice Tipped Arrows helps with Clear. We're using Short Fuse Blind on it as an additional source of Blind, Magnified Area, and Multi-Shot. On Freezing Mark, this is really important to set up for bossing. You want Mark of Siphoning. This will allow you to leech your mana off of your attack damage on bosses. This gives us a lot of mana sustain. We're also using this with Eternal Mark so that when we freeze the boss, we don't lose Mark of Siphoning on them. We've also got Marked for Death so that we're breaking some of their armor, and then Charged Mark so that we can proc Shock on enemies. We actually are doing a fair bit of shock damage, so we are shocking most things, but this gives us another like guaranteed source of it. In Wind Dancer, we've got Blind and Cannibalism, Herald Device, Elemental Armament, Magnified Area 2, Elemental Focus, Cold Pen, and Long Shot. And then our Tornado Shot, we've got Overabundance, Prolonged Duration, Durability, and Mana Leech. This is just another way, because we're going to be shooting into our Tornado Shot, placing it on a boss to make sure that our mana is staying up on bosses. For our gear, one of the first like big purchases I made for this build is Hyri's Ire. This is a awesome chess piece. It is quite expensive though. This one that I bought was 18 divines. It's going to give us a lot of evasion rating, extra damage is cold, dexterity, increased freeze duration on enemies, but the big kicker is that our evasion rating is doubled if we've not been hit recently. This gives us a ton of evasion rating, which is super, super nice. It basically fills out a lot of our evasion rating needs, especially with the node for Bestial Skin, which gives us another 100% increased evasion rating from our body armor. Super good combo, gives us extra damage, extra freeze duration on enemies, and that extra evasion will apply to Ghost Dance to give us even more energy shield back when we get hit. We are also opting for a very big energy shield helmet. This one's got almost 500 energy shield with some extra crit chance and some resistances. We are going to be using Subterfuge Mask, so we get 2 evasion rating per 1 energy shield on our helmet. Super strong node. This is also going to give us a lot of evasion rating for the more energy shield we go for. It's also going to be the most of our energy shield on the build. For our gloves, I opted for just flat damage gloves. There are some unique gloves that you could use. However, on this build, we're going to be using Kadira's Gambit. This is a game-changing quiver. I bought this for like 70 exalts. They're pretty cheap. And it's going to give us all of these arrows that are going to allow us to chain damage, splinter towards 6 targets, pierce and return, get guaranteed crits with crit damage bonus. This quiver does a ton of things for us, and it also gets mirrored by our Deadeye Mirage, so our Mirage will be firing with all of these. It also has 600% rarity arrows, so really, really nice, but the big downside is that we're missing a lot of flat damage by using this, so I opted for just some pure flat damage gloves with some bonus fire, cold, and lightning, with some extra attack speed. Then on our bow, we're going for a big fizz bow. I've got some added cold, some crit chance, some crit damage, and attack speed. Don't have plus levels on this. I think technically you could go for crit chance, crit damage, and plus levels. The big, most important thing is crit chance. Your crit chance is based off of your bow. So any percent increases to crit is based off of what your base crit is, whatever is on your bow. So in order to play this build as a crit build, you just need to have plus levels to crit chance on your weapon. Build doesn't really work without it. And so that is really, really important. On our rings, we've got some cold damage, some evasion, some rarity, and resistances. This one's got some cold damage, some max life, and some resistances. On our boots, another place to pick up some extra evasion and energy shield. And you can get some deflection rating. Deflection rating is going to allow us to mitigate some of the damage that comes in when we do get hit. These were, I think, like 1 divine. And then the Headhunter belt. Headhunter is not needed for this build. We're not relying on it for AoE clear or screen clear. Build does it on its own. However, it is just like the strongest belt in the game. If you start killing some rares, you get a bunch of extra modifiers, which increase your survivability and your damage. And then lastly, on your amulet, amulet's a great spot to pick up a bunch of survivability. You can get increases to global defenses, which would increase your energy shield and your evasion. I'm opting for a lot of spirit on my amulet. I could get more, but we definitely need spirit because we're using Hyri's Iris, which doesn't give us any spirit. And then we're also going to get some plus levels of projectile skills, some increased energy shield, and plus to energy shield, all really nice. And that is kind of it for our gear. I will sometimes, for like pinnacle bosses, swap to this quiver. I don't use it in maps, like I just use Kadiros in maps. However, when you get to pinnacle bosses, for a little bit more single target damage, you can swap to like a... this one's got increased damage with bow skills, flat damage, plus levels of projectiles, and a bunch of extra crit chance and crit damage. This is really nice. I picked this up for 24 exalts. Definitely underpriced, but you can get a nice little crit quiver to replace for like single target damage if you want one. Our single target damage isn't lacking, but you can boost it up technically with a like visceral quiver for pinnacle bosses. In our skill tree and our ascendancy, we've got our Mirage Deadeye. You could technically lose endless munitions for the additional projectile. I quite like it, but if I wasn't using endless munitions, I'd use Called Chance for just the free applying marks to enemies. Would be pretty nice. However, I opted for the additional projectile. We're using point blank because we're going to be barrel stuffing bosses. And then we've got Tailwind on. For the skill tree, we're kind of just rushing, picking up Honed Instinct for the extra attack speed. And then we're going down, grabbing Escape Velocity. I grabbed a lot of movement speed things because I wanted to be speedy. I'm using the Heart of the Well for extra cold and extra lightning. This is another way for us to apply shocks, is getting bonus damage as lightning. We've got Catalysis for some fizz damage converted to elements. Stand and Deliver. Once again, we're going to be point blanking bosses with Tornado Shot, so this is big damage for us. Acceleration, more movement speed and skill speed. Wildcat going up on the left side to get a bunch of extra deflection rating. I've got Maiming Strike so that we can maim, slow, chill, and freeze enemies for more attack damage. Feather Deflection, any projectile speeds also apply to damage with our bows. Grabbing the big crit wheel here with Bestial Skin. And then this is really, really nice. You can put in a Time Lost Sapphire here. You could get crit chance and crit damage. I've got some mana on kill and crit damage. So all of these nodes here now also give me +7 crit damage. So +7 increased crit damage bonus, 7% crit damage, 7% crit damage. But all of these little nodes here also give me 1 mana back on kill. So our mana sustained in maps is crazy. You just like literally never have issues. Then we're going up to the left here to grab Imbibe Power. Increased damage and attack speed during any flask effect. Blinding Strike. We do want sources of blind on this build. Blind is going to make enemies take more damage from us with some of our tech, but also it's going to have them reduce their accuracy, so they're going to have a harder time hitting us. We grab Shimmering for the extra movement speed here. Went over for Step Like Mist for even more movement speed. Flow Like Water, Mindfulness, Crashing Wave. We are critting quite a lot, but we still deal non-crits, so we picked up Moment of Truth for the crit damage and the extra crit chance. And then we go up here for Deadly Force, for the Jugular, True Strike, for big crit wheel, probably the best crit wheel in the game. And then Chakra of Thought is something I wasn't sure if I wanted to use or not. I actually quite like this. It's 15% attack speed while not on low mana. We're rarely ever on low mana on this build, and it gives us some survivability with a percentage of our mana being taken from before our life. So some extra survivability there, which is quite nice. And then we picked up Spectral Ward for the +1 energy shield per 12 evasion rating on our body armor. This nets us out over 100 extra energy shield. So that is also a really, really great point. And then lastly, I've got a jewel here for some crit chance, crit damage, area of effect, and shock magnitude, and Killer Instinct for some increased damage while we're on full life. We're basically on full life, so this is pretty free point there for just 3 points. For the how to play this build, when you're starting out and you don't have very much damage, you're going to want to kind of use the combo of using a tornado shot into an ice shot. This will just amplify your damage massively and will help with your clear as well as your single target. Once you've got decent damage, you no longer need to use the tornado for mapping. Only really call it out for bosses. You're just walking around shooting your ice shot, killing everything on screen. And then I'm using my ice-tipped arrows off of cooldown. This will just help with screen clear. Whenever you're picking your remnants up, you'll get even more cooldowns. So your ice-tipped arrows are up basically every other pack of enemies, which is quite nice. And then if there is something that's scary or you need to freeze instantly, you can just quickly tap your freezing salvo. You'll freeze the enemy and then just go into your tornado shot, ice shot rotation for anything that's super, super tanky. But once again, you kind of get to a point that you just need to shoot ice shot, and that's really it. And that is the build. I will freezing mark at the start of our damage rotation for bosses, just so that once we start really dumping damage onto them, we're leeching all of that damage and also breaking some armor. And that is kind of our setup. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the build guide. I do plan on updating the werewolf build next, as I've got some ideas for how to improve that build even further. I will catch you all in the next one, guys. Take care. Peace.